really interacted with you before this whole thing happened. I left the organization in 2015. When did you leave?
So I left in September 2018, and sort of came into the activist world, so to speak, I think in January 2019.
So, what was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, for you?
Ultimately, it was the Australian Royal Commission. I had been researching a theocratic question, and I was in my office at home, and I was looking for it, and I happened to see in the suggested um, posts that they put on the side, there was something about the Australian Royal Commission, and Jehovah's Witnesses were mentioned, and I thought, what? And I had a look at it, and I just remember thinking, how could I be part of an organisation in Australia, where I'm from, in the legal world, and not know that my religion was part of it? So I watched it all 8 days, and I remember getting to the 8th day, and I was a bit ho-hum about the elders. I'm like, oh, these blokes are imperfect, the whole thing. But then when Jeffrey Jackson stood up, or didn't stand up, but spoke and said, that I can't think of what he said at the time, but it's famous, everybody would know, that would be presumptuous to say so. I thought, no, and that's it. I stood up in my office, and that was it. I knew it just, the whole thing fell apart.
Yeah,
So that was ultimately what caused it.
that was a linchpin for many. I have a close personal friend whose wife that was her linchpin as well. She woke up right after that. It was like, okay, everything, all these doubts I've been having, they're all real, and that was kind of definitely that straw that broke the camel's back for her. For me, it was kind of a process. Started. I had been weak, as they say, weak spiritually for years, and I had started to get stronger again. I started going to all the meetings and everything, and I decided to do personal study like they tell you to. And so this was like the first time I was studying in my life since the internet had been so prevalent. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm just going to confirm everything, just look everything up, and just confirm it with encyclopedias. And I think the first thing that ran into was that destruction of Jerusalem issue. It's 607 versus 587, and I got freaked out. And then, of course, all the other things started falling into place. But the rest is history. That's kind of what started it for me. But then the child abuse thing was definitely one of those things that ended up being like, yep, just more confirmation that I'm in a cult, and this is not right. But you mentioned your legal background. Were you an attorney? Were you what part
Yes.
of what? So you were an attorney,
Yeah.
and you've
What you
been
call an attorney, we call them solicitors, but yeah.
solicitors. Yes, yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
So you were. Do you still practice law, or is that
No.
no? Okay.
No,
I just
I haven't traditionally practiced at all since 2017. Actually, just at the end of 2016, I was horrifically unwell, and it's fairly well reported that I had a fairly serious life event in 2017, attempted suicide. It's everyone knows, well, not everybody, I beg your pardon. It was in my interview that I did with Lloyd in June 2019. And so after that, I haven't practiced in traditional law. Obviously, I've done some consulting work and bits and pieces, but for the last 2.5 years, I've not worked at all in the field. So that's a choice. It's just my mental health's more important, so I've made the choice, and it's just not an industry conducive to mental health.
It's not. I actually, the first job I had out of high school was legal. Well, I was a typist at first, and so I was transcribing lawyers' dictation on tape, and making up documents for them. And then I graduated, I guess, to a legal assistant, which is not quite a paralegal, but basically does all the grunt work for paralegals. And I was that for about 4 years, and in insurance defense. And then I moved over to criminal defense, and that only lasted 3 months for me. It really affected my mental health.
It's a tough industry, that one.
Yeah, I could not deal with it, and I quit and started working at Best Buy. I felt like Best Buy was a better career than criminal defense law.
Yeah, I would agree.
The electronic store, yeah. So anyway, so that's who we are, and it's really good to meet you. Thanks for coming on again. Let's talk about the last over the last, I guess, month and a half, since this year. We have this timeline, and I want to make sure that this is accurate. On January 2nd, Lloyd announced his break from XJW Activism to focus on his mental health. And then a little less than a month later, you released a statement on Reddit, and you made a number of allegations that we'll get to. And then later that day, Lloyd did a live stream to address those allegations where he admitted to a number of them. And then a few days later, he issued another statement on Facebook. And then the day after that, you did a live stream responding to his statements with Jonathan Berger, which I've watched about 45 minutes of that live stream, and it was very long. And I was like, I don't know if I could sit through this whole thing. I'm very ADHD. As you can tell, my live streams are only like 15, 20 minutes long. So I didn't have the attention span to sit through the whole thing. But from what I saw, there was, there was a lot of crosstalk and back and forth. So I'm not saying that it was a bad live stream or anything. I'm just saying, like, I think this is this stream that we're doing is going to, kind of just like, this is like the meat and potatoes, like the highlights of what you got into. And then on the 9th, Lloyd issued that additional written statement that he still has on jwwatch.com. And so we'll get into this. I want to make sure that my analysis of your allegations is correct. Like, I kind of boiled it down into 4 bullet points, and I didn't see anything else in there other than how you felt about the topic. Is this accurate? You talked about his infidelity, his engagement with prostitutes. Talked about. Is it fairly accurate?
Yeah, that would be accurate. The only other thing that was in the statement that was, other than my own reaction and emotion, was my motivation for doing what I did. So, but yeah, that's quite accurate, I would say.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything, because there's been, a talk that, what you've done with this statement was defamation, and I want to make sure that this is what was put forth, because these, as we'll examine, these are things that are not contested by Lloyd. He has not contested these at all. Yep. So, okay, I just want to make sure that's accurate. We don't. So I'm not going to read that whole slide. We'll go one by one, though. So on the infidelity and engagement with prostitutes on a very regular basis over many years, Lloyd did not dispute this. But he did say that it wasn't a regular basis and it wasn't many years. So his statements, which, if somebody wants to see these slides in detail on my, on another stream that I did, but his statements basically boil down to 2 or 3 months in between for 3 or 4 years. What's your response to that excuse that he has given?
Well, I mean, it's a matter of perspective as regards regular. I stand by my statement. I stand by the fact that it was on a regular basis. They were his words that he used with me. And I would obviously contest the 3 to 4 years. That's not what he told me. However, if that's what he wishes to disclose, I'm not going to split hairs over things like that. The fact is that 1 year, 1 month is a fact of the matter. It happened, and I still stand by my statement. It's a regular basis over a number of years.
Okay, perfect. And then the other allegation was that his 2-month break from activism to reevaluate his life for the sake of his mental health was not correct, because he was making use of the many different facilities in Thailand and getting to know the locals and other tourists. And before we get into that, his response to this was that he did not go to Thailand for its sex industry. And he then said, of those, in a written statement on Facebook, of those I met in Thailand, sex workers or otherwise, nobody was a minor, either by Thai or U.S. law, and all were in their 20s or older. So I want to make it clear. I want you to make it clear. Did you, in your statement, accuse him of using sex workers in Thailand?
No.
No. Okay.
No, I didn't.
And did you accuse him of anything untoward with anyone that might be a minor or anything like that?
Absolutely not. There was no discussion of that whatsoever. That's introduced evidence that is unnecessary.
Okay.
It's irrelevant.
All right. I just wanted to make that clear because there's some out there that are saying that those are allegations you put forth, but
no.
That I wanted to point out that I didn't see anything like that in your original written statement.
No, that's information he has introduced after my statement.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. Now, the other allegation that you made was that he was using funding generated through his activism work to pay for prostitution. Now, his response was that he's a professional activist and he gets to spend his wages as he pleases, and that he shouldn't be asked to account for how he spends his personal funds. If he was, he says, if that had ever been the case, I would never have used Patreon to begin with. Those were his words in his Facebook statement. Did you ever accuse him of using specifically Patreon funds for his work?
No, Lloyd has 4 streams of income that I'm aware of, and they are his exclusive streams of income. All of them are generated funds from his activism work. It would be impossible for me to specify, well, he actually took it out of the Patreon account. That's ridiculous. His income stream is only from work generated through activism. So whether that be his book, ads on social media, ads on YouTube, Patreon, Teespring, whatever else, all of those styles of income streams. I can't say specifically which one. I just said activism work.
Okay. Okay, good. That clears it up. So he's the one who basically brought Patreon up in his statement. It was not you.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I want to make that clear too. Now, you did allege that he has shouted down other activists for not agreeing with him, and I edited out some of the words, but I mean, the statement's out there. People can go look it up. I just did that for brevity. He hasn't addressed this allegation at all, but from my experience with Lloyd, he's been kind to me at times, and then at the same time, he's very resistant to criticism. I personally was on Reddit at the time that the original child sexual abuse documentary that he put out, that first documentary he worked on, I was on Reddit as a different account because I had elders looking at my old posts as Capitan, and so I just created a new account. I made a small criticism of him, which ironically I shouldn't have criticized him on this because I'm very unkempt today. My beard is all crazy today, but I mentioned, hey, it would have been nice if you'd shaved and combed your hair because Jehovah's Witnesses can be kind of turned off by that. And I was eviscerated. I ended up deleting that whole comment and deleted my account because no one knew that was me, and I was like, oh, they're all coming after me now. All these people started criticizing me. So that wasn't unique. That reaction wasn't unique. There's a lot of people that anytime that they would criticize him, there was a band of, I guess the psychological term would be flying monkeys would come and attack you. So I'm not going to ask you to comment on this. I think that the community at large has seen that does happen to him, and it is kind of a recurring issue. I'm not going to comment any more on that, though, and I don't expect you to unless you want to.
I think that the community's able to have a look for themselves. The only reason I raised that as an issue in respect of this particular statement was the fact that, rather than yell at me and shout me down, go and do your own research. it goes towards my motivation for what I was doing. Look at it from, don't believe me, go and check it out. I'm not the first person that's spoken out about things and had criticisms. And there are a lot of activists who, have spoken out and have been shut down. And we need to look at the behaviour. So that was my intention for bringing that up.
That's correct. Yeah, I think kindness goes a long way. You attract more flies with honey, kind of thing. And I think you make more enemies with vinegar. And I do want to state at this point, I don't hate Lloyd at all. I think that he has some issues that he's dealing with, as all of us XJWs are. And I'm not saying that his issues are more serious than mine or more serious than yours, or that mine are worse than his. But it's I do hope that he could recognize at some point that there's something that he needs to address.
Absolutely. And I also agree with you. I don't hate Lloyd. I don't care what anyone says. I know my heart, and I know that I don't hate Lloyd. I have a lot of hurt for him and what's happening in his life, and I really wish that things could have been different, and I wish that he could acknowledge some of the issues that he does have and some of the mistakes that he has made, and that he could change. And if he had been in that situation, we probably wouldn't be here today. It's his lack of ability to recognize and acknowledge and to change and do better.
Yeah, I think, I still have hope for. I don't write anybody off. I would, I'd gladly have a conversation with Lloyd if he's willing to, talk about that. I wouldn't shy away from that. I don't think he would at this time. I don't think it would be wise for him. I think that him talking is probably what led to a lot more of these issues that are going on right now. And I think that the wise PR move probably would have been to just let the storm boil over and not say anything. But he did not do that, which basically is why we're here. So his most recent written statement, the one that he put on jwwatch.org, he refers to the information that you divulged about. He refers to that as much of this information was entirely false. Now, what is your response to his characterization of that? I mean, we've covered that he's admitted to some of them, but why do you think he's saying that much of it was entirely false?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I don't understand. He made this. I didn't have to prove anything. He came out and agreed. So I've got no idea why. To me, that's actually defamation towards me. He's claiming that I have made false statements. I don't understand why he did it. I have no idea.
Yeah. He said that, and that second point that he made, that the statements and the comments and accusations were untrue and defamatory in nature, that's about the same as what we just talked about. He did say that his family and personal life are being targeted with slander. Now, before we address that, you're an attorney. What is the legal definition of, what's the difference between defamation and slander from a legal perspective?
Well, not much anymore. It's the same. They're basically being incorporated into each other. So defamation is when you make a statement about somebody that's factually untrue. Slander is not a term that we have. It's been amalgamated in Australia, so I'd have to look it up. Slander is when you deliberately make a statement about somebody that damages them and harms them. I'm on the hop here. I haven't seen those. I'd have to look them up. But generally speaking, it's that majority of what you say is knowingly and falsely untrue. Knowingly and false being untrue. That's and that it has harm towards the person. So the slander element is where you have harm towards that person. This creates a harm. So, for example, if it were the case that I had said that Lloyd had been having sexual relations with sex workers, and it wasn't true, then there could be harm to him because of his work. So that could be that could be, if that were correct, then that would be slanderous.
So for something to be slanderous or defamation, it has to be untrue, number one.
Substantially untrue, yes, and
Substantially
knowingly
untrue.
stated.
And it has to be done, it has to have harmed the person that the defamation is against.
Yeah.
And it has to be knowingly, you said knowingly untrue as well too, correct?
Yeah, so it has to be known. So say, for example, if I said that Capitan isn't Capitan, you know, I'm someone and I was charged with defamation, or you know, a claim was made against me for defamation. I'm like, well, his name on the screen was Capitan, like, so I have a reasonable belief, irrespective of whether it's actually true or not. If I can substantiate reasonable belief that what I said was true, then it doesn't necessarily mean that it's defamation.
Understood. Okay. So again, at this point where he says his family and personal life are being targeted with slander, if I recall the statement, that was in a separate paragraph. So I have a feeling that this was not, this specific statement was not targeted towards you, because there were things that came out later that have so far not been corroborated with, you know, at least for my standards of evidence or for any court standard of evidence, have not been corroborated yet. So I think that may be what he's referring to in that place.
And look, that may well be the case. I don't know. But if that is what the intention of his statement there was, I think that it needs to be made as a very separate issue. I raised the issues that I've highlighted in my statement that you've recently correctly pointed out in the earlier screenshot. But as regards everything else, I'm not involved with that. So if he wants to make allegations of slander or defamation in relation to anything other than what I've said in my statement or said personally, then it's false. It's incorrect. I've had nothing to do with it, and I've made no statements in respect of that matter. Okay,
fair enough.
As to the validity or whether I'm not the one making the allegation, I'll put it that way.
No problem. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and these other parts of his statement have been up. I'm not going to ask you to comment on them. They're related to everything we've been talking about, but people can see his statement for themselves. He's linked to it on Twitter, and it's on jwwatch.org, but I think you have to have the direct link to see the PDF. However, if you go to Lloyd's Twitter, you can see the link to his statement and get his side of the story in reference to this. So here's the question and answer part. So we've covered, you know, we've covered all the allegations that you from the January 31st statement and kind of your response to Lloyd's response. I'm sorry, my words are failing me here. So when you were first made aware of the things that you put forth in that statement, when was that? When were you first made aware of those?
It would have either been the 16th. I have to get my diary. It was either the 16th or the 18th of December. I just can't remember. It was somewhere around there.
So this was prior to his video on saying that he was taking a mental health break.
Yes.
Okay. And so some are characterizing what you've done as far as releasing this information as unethical. How do you respond to that characterization?
Well, look, I respect everyone's right to have their own opinion as to what is ethical and what isn't ethical. But as someone who I consider colleague, and we work together very closely, if you look at how, people, what would be expected ethically of somebody who worked in a workplace, and I'm not saying that Lloyd stole anything from me, but if you knew an employee, a colleague was stealing from a company, then you would by all means you would have an ethical responsibility to do something about that and to act ethically in the best interest of your employer. And although neither Lloyd nor I are directly employed by an employer, he does have financial backers. He has patrons. He has people who follow his work, who contribute through super chats and all sorts of bits, lots of bits and pieces along that line. And so when I was thinking about it, and making decisions about what should be done. I did consider those things. I thought, well, you know, what about patrons? What about people who are financially supporting his work? In a way, they have a client relationship with him. They are paying him for a service and for a movement and to, because they believe in his work. And so when I thought about it, you know, how would it compare to something that happened in a worldly environment, in a secular job? I considered that and thought, well, no, it is unethical of me if I don't speak, because he has a responsibility and I have a responsibility to his clients. And there would be those who would argue that they aren't his clients, that they're financial backers or contributors. And I respect. I'm not going to split hairs over a name or a terminology or a label or whatever, but that's my position. I think it's unethical. And if someone disagrees with me, then I respect their right to disagree.
Okay, fair enough. I kind of agree with you. I think it is a matter of perspective as far as the ethics behind it. You mentioned that story about if a colleague of yours in the workplace was stealing, you know, who would you go to if you find that out? You would go to your boss, right? You'd be, you know, hey, look, HR, you report it to the human resources. Now, if you found out your boss was doing that, who would you go to? And you would blow the whistle. You know, you would have to become a whistleblower, and along with that comes a lot of heat. And so, and you've certainly gotten your share of heat. And okay, fair enough. That's how you would respond. Okay, so in your time working with Lloyd at JW Watch, have you ever had an attorney-client relationship with him?
No.
No.
There's a number of reasons why that couldn't possibly be the case. He's in Croatia. I'm not licensed to practice in Croatia at all, nor in any other country other than Australia. But I've never had been paid by him in any way, shape or form. And I've never given him any legal advice. He has an independent solicitor who does his work in respect of his Activism JW Watch work. He had an independent lawyer who did work for him during the ICSA hearings. I've never been engaged to provide him with attorney-client information or advice. No, is the answer.
So you don't have to answer this. I think that I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I think a lot of people that keep up with Lloyd's videos, and for instance, I watched the feature video that he did on when that guy escaped the Bethel. I think it was in Germany or something like that. And I think on that video, he asks you a few questions like, what are we running into here? Are we going to run into any issues with that? Would that be classified as legal advice?
No, that was tongue in cheek. It was very, no, that was very much, I was playing a role. It took me about 14 takes to get it right because I kept mucking around. No, I'm not mucking around. We couldn't get our act together. It was just silly. But no, there was certainly no client-attorney relationship in there. The information that I gave was very generic. We were just discussing what the situation is in Germany, what the laws are like, what the flavour of everything is. It certainly couldn't be constituted. And at any rate, if it was legal advice, it wouldn't be provided in that format. It wouldn't be provided in a public place. I would never give legal advice on the internet. It would only be one-to-one or in writing. So absolutely not. It was very tongue-in-cheek, and it was very much part of the whole plan. And I understand that it doesn't necessarily make sense because what viewers may not realise is that when the video started, the concept for it, and that was filmed in August. So it was filmed some months before it, quite a few months before it even hit the editing floor. And the original intention of the video was very different to what it ended up to be. So I could understand that someone may have that confusion, but it was supposed to be part of a different set of narratives. But obviously I don't have control of the editing and the narration of it. That's Lloyd's creative right. But certainly it's not. It would have been more obvious if the original narration had been followed. And there were lots of other things that I had said that got edited out. So not a sufficient context. There's just no way, if you had seen the entirety of it, there's no way you could see that as legal advice. It's the way it's been edited, and it doesn't fit the original narrative.
Fair enough. As you know, I worked for a TV show myself in my past life, so I kind of know what goes into creating content. You have these setups, and they're not organic. They're not real. They're set up in order to move the story along. And so I understand. That's a good response. I think I'm satisfied. Yeah, satisfied with that response. So I don't want to get in too much into these allegations, these new allegations. But there have been new allegations from another party that have come out against Lloyd in the aftermath of your original statement. This is from a third party. And so far, in my opinion, these allegations need far more specific evidence for me to consider them substantiated. When did you first become aware of these other allegations that we're going to call the Marco allegations?
I don't know what day it was. I know that the statement was obviously issued, because I'm in Australia, it was issued in the nighttime in America. We were asleep, or in the daytime in America, we were asleep. I woke up on that following morning. I don't know how many notifications, 780 notifications, something ridiculous on my phone. And I thought, oh, I wonder what's happened. Excuse me. I also had a message from Diana asking me to shut down whatever Joel was talking about. And I thought, hang on a minute, what is Joel talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. Who's done what? And anyway, I said, well, look, give me a minute. I need to look at what's happened. I don't understand. So I looked at the statements. I looked at what had been said, what had been done. I didn't know what on earth had happened. So I contacted Kim and Mikey and said, look, I've been contacted by Diana. She's objecting. She wants this shut down. What's going on? Tell me what's happening. And we had a very brief conversation. And subsequent to that, they provided me with a copy of one of the screenshots and said, please give this to Diana. And I said, okay, so I did. And I sent it to her and said, look, this is what I've been shown. Like, this is all I know. And she obviously emphatically denied it and said, certain things, all to the summary of, this is all lies, it's rubbish, it's not true, it's false. I can't remember the exact words, so I won't elaborate, but to that effect, that's what she had said. And I said, well, look, at this point in time, I don't know what to believe. I have no control over it. I have no say. It's not me. Obviously know who it is. If you're saying that it's Joel, approach Joel, talk to him directly. It's got nothing to do with me. And the conversation was left. And it was not exactly those words. It's just words to that effect, that, it's got nothing to do with me. And so that's when I became fully aware of the Marco allegations, and that there was alleged information that substantiated that claim. Allegedly, I don't know. I'm not getting into it. I'm not getting involved. It's got nothing to do with what I said in my statement, my concerns for the XJW community. It's a completely different entity, and I'm not going to say any more about it.
So you would say that from what you brought up, Deanna's statements to you, that they've been in line with what her public statement was recently.
Yes.
Okay. There are some people that are wondering if that was real, and I want to make clear that we don't have any evidence that anyone's controlling Deanna or controlling her social media accounts. And you spoke to her directly, and
no, I didn't speak with her. I just want to be very clear. I messaged with her.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I did try and speak to her on the phone. I tried to call so I could speak with her, and she didn't take my call, but we continued messaging. So I don't know. I know that this message came from Deanna's phone. I have no reason to question that it wasn't Deanna. I don't know 100% that it was her. All I can say is that it came from her phone, and I reasonably believe that it was her.
I think that's a reasonable belief. I agree. I think until we have some kind of something that conclusively says that that's not her.
Which I have no evidence.
Otherwise, it's wild talk. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just wild talk and pure speculation.
And at any rate, I will say this. I know Diana reasonably well, and if she said that she didn't have any knowledge of it, then we have to accept that. I don't think it's constructive to get into, she didn't do this and that. And some of the things I've heard people write about Diana in the last few days have been absolutely disgraceful. So I just think it's not helpful to anybody to make that speculation that it is or isn't her. Whether it is or isn't her isn't helping her. So talking about it's not helping anybody.
I agree, and I think that before anybody brings her into and accuses her of anything, there needs to be. She's the one. She's been, in my opinion, she is the first victim in all of this, in this
100%.
whole mess, and
I agree.
She needs to be treated with kid gloves, the utmost empathy, and until there's any evidence to the contrary, that needs to be the default. And
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And it
yeah,
really annoys me that anything other than that's going on.
yeah, I agree with that. I definitely do. Okay, so we'll move on from that. You mentioned Mike and Kim. There's some that are alleging that you colluded with other XJW personalities prior to your January 31st allegations, specifically Mike and Kim and or the XJW group known as the Vast Apostate Army. What is your response to these allegations that people are saying against you?
I colluded. No, that's false. I had conversations with Mike and Kim and with Mark and Cora prior to my statement on the 31st of January. I did make them aware of some of the facts, probably similar facts to what I made known to the public subsequent to that. And they did know. I couldn't tell you how long, maybe a week, 10 days. I'd stand corrected. I don't know how long before it was. I did speak to Mark and Kim independently from Mark and Cora. They both parties knew that I was speaking to the other party. It was all very, transparent. And the purpose of me speaking to them was part of my process of deciding what the correct and the right thing to do would be in terms of how it would impact the XJW community, whether or not it was beneficial. Was I overreacting? Was I was my assessment and thought process in respect to the matter valid? They are, long-term members of the XJW community. I've only been in the community for 3 years or whatever it's been. I did seek their advice and I respected their privacy, and they didn't disclose any of the information that I spoke with them about to the public. They were very, very kind. They were not sensationalists. They were not, go get Lloyd. None of that. They were really, really helpful in helping me to sort out exactly, what my thoughts were, what the best course of action were. There's so many factors to take into consideration. So yes, I did speak to Kim and Mike, and I did speak to Mark and Cora, specifically in respect of the allegations that I made only. But I had no involvement with the Vast Apostate Army or any of their members. I couldn't tell you who their members were. I know some of them, but not all of them. But I had no interaction with them whatsoever prior to 31st.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, I think that clears that up. And then, of course, we all hindsight is 2020. Kim, if you could change one thing about how you handled all of this, what would you change?
Well, what I probably would have done, now that, I know what I definitely would have done is I would have told the whole story in a detailed, in a contextual detail, contextual format without the detail. When I wrote the statement, and I know I'm going to get hammered for this and I don't care. The fact of the matter is, when I wrote the statement, I was very mindful of trying to focus specifically on aspects of the issue that related to Lloyd's work, activism, and how that can impact the community and those, what I call stakeholders involved, with his work. I understand that it's created a lot of confusion and people don't understand 100% what happened, and I take responsibility for that. And it's because I was attempting to be cautious in what I said, that it's probably created some confusion that's either still going around or certainly was going around and has had to be ironed out. I'm more than happy to elaborate on that if you want, but that's what I would change.
Yeah, I mean, I think feel free to elaborate. So you spoke a little bit about your state of mind when you posted it, like your intentions. Um, I think elaborate on that. Elaborate on why you posted it the way you did, and then what your intentions were, and
Yeah.
why what the context is that you wish had been there.
Yeah. So if I could go back and have my time again, and I accept that I can't, but what I would say is that, when I say myself, I'm referring to myself and producer Bob. So I had a conversation with Lloyd over Zoom. We'd had a business meeting. He made disclosures. He was extremely aggressive during the conversation. He'd made some very, very like wild comments in respect of the issues, and he'd made assumptions. He had an assumption that I had been aware. He spoke as if I had been aware that he was engaging with sex workers. That his words were words to the effect that, Deanna didn't know like what a massage parlor was, and I'm like, why are we talking about massage parlors? In my head, I'm thinking, well, and then, I'm trying to play catch up. The behavior that he displayed in that meeting, and I thought that I had known that man very, very well on a professional level. Seeing him, the way he interacted, I went from immediately one thing to, you are completely full-blown, horrifically narcissistic, and you're not prepared to take any responsibility. He had wanted to make an alternative arrangement in his marriage with his wife. She had originally agreed. She then changed her mind, rightly so. That's well within her rights to do that. And he got cranky. And he was cranky that she had, changed her mind. And I won't use the term, but it was a head smash that she was doing to him. Through the course of the conversation, I was like, you both need to be away from each other because this is horrific. Like, you are damaging probably each other, but certainly Lloyd was damaging her. And so I was just horrendously confused and like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. What the hell have I walked into here? Like, this is no. And so I thought the best thing was for him to be away from her for a while to give some levity, because I was very concerned about some emotional abuse issues at that particular time. I had personal concerns. So, that was fine. He went to do that. During that conversation, he asked me to engage with Deanna to support her. He asked myself and producer Bob to support her. Prior to that time, I shouldn't speak for producer Bob, but if she spoke to him on a one-off, if she had spoken to Deanna once prior to that, I would be surprised. I don't believe that she did. I don't know, but that's my understanding. But I had met Deanna when she came to Australia, and we spent some time together. I helped her out with the kids. Her children are gorgeous. And I had probably spoken to her 4 or 5 times, perhaps on the phone and or messages independent, just directly between her and I. I certainly had a lot of respect for her, but I didn't know her very well at all. And I certainly wouldn't have called us friends. Certainly we were acquaintances, but 99% of my interactions with Lloyd. And so he had asked me to support her, and I was, okay, like, I'll do what I can. I was fairly well in shock at that point. And after he left for Thailand, Deanna and I made contact because he had made the arrangement for us to interact and for me to support her. In that ensuing period, Deanna obviously, had broken down. She had spoken about what had happened. She was extremely emotional on one particular day when he'd put the I'm taking a break video out, and everyone's commenting and saying, oh, way for putting your family first, and good on you, Lloyd, and, you're doing the right thing. You're putting your family first. And she knows the truth, and she's at home, with 2 kids by herself, going through what she's going through. She's emotional. There's a lot of things going on, and now the community's telling him that he's such a great person, and she was absolutely devastated. And she was telling me a story about how she'd been to her therapist, and I think her therapist is one of the most amazing therapists I've ever heard of. And she was talking about that, and she was telling me you know, all of what had happened in their relationship. And I remember after a while, and she was in the bunker at the time, she was sitting there talking, which was surreal in itself. But she was in there and she was talking, and she you know, was telling me, and I just said to her, Diana, I have to ask you, did your counsellor, did your therapist talk about severe emotional abuse? And she broke down, like completely broke down, to the point where I told her to put the camera on so I could see her, because we were over the phone at that point. And I said, you know, and she couldn't believe that he had, you know, she thought she had told the therapist one, like her side of the story, and that they were saying that because of her side of the story. When she heard that from me, that's when, you know, she was just emotionally a destroyed person, and it broke my heart. It honestly broke my heart to see her in that state, and to hear the things that had happened, and you know, so there's a lot more. Like I would that you know, there's the 17th, there's 18th of December, his disclosure, his request to involve us with Diana's disclosures to us, and you know, trying to support her, and you know, and I was extremely angry. The things that I then found out, that you know, he wasn't just in Thailand to go scuba diving. There were other things that I was aware of from him that had been going on. So I'm getting more, and the way he's treating Diana, she had shared screenshots of conversations. She had shared screenshots of letters between the two of them. She had shared, you know, so many bits of information with me, trying to because she wanted someone to believe her that this is what was going on, because most people couldn't believe that Lloyd would be like that. Even she, you know, even though I didn't need to believe her, she needed me to believe. And so I, you know, I was reading what she was saying, and I was taking in confidence what she was saying. And you know, she made it clear that she had a certain direction that she wanted her marriage to end in. And I provided her with some assistance to be able to go in that direction. And, you know, I did what I physically could do for her and what I emotionally could do with her. But it became increasingly difficult to be able to deal with Lloyd in a constructive manner, because of the fact that I knew what he had done in the past, you know, in terms of infidelity, engagement with sex workers, how contradictory and how problematic that was with his with his employment, you know, with his activism work. You know, the whole thing was just, you know, I didn't ask for none of this. He's done this. He's imposed Diana on me, and I would do it again with Diana, because I do like the woman. I think I have so much respect for her. It's not funny. I'm extremely concerned for her situation, but I respect that she has it in order. She's a strong woman. She knows where it's at. She will do what she needs to do in her time when she's ready, and I have to just be here when she's ready if she needs me. But, you know, I held back, telling people, here's what happened, here's the process of how this all came out, and this is what happened, and this is what made me make the decision. So it wasn't a 180 turn. Yeah. It never was a 180 turn. It was just that I was desperately trying to protect Diana's privacy as much as I possibly could. And I realized that I probably did. I withheld too much, and people didn't understand what happened to get us to where we got to. Lloyd became increasingly, I had said to him many a time, you need to address your issues. You know, you've got significant issues. You know, no one could tell him that he was narcissistic. You're not a counsellor, what would you know? Nobody, he denied that he had addiction to sex and issues relating to sex. And there were statements that he made, I can't repeat them because they're disgusting, but words to the effect that, you know, if I was addicted to sex, I'd be constantly thinking about it and wanting to do it every single minute of every day. Like, ridiculous. Not really wanting to address the real issues. And I tried so desperately to get him to look at, you know, why are you in Thailand? What are you doing? What do you want to do? He was so all over the place, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I've got Diana falling apart, him acting like an asshole. I'm sorry, it is what it is. I'm going to say it. And I just was like, how can he do this to himself? How can he do it to her? How can he do it to the ex-JW community? This is bullshit. You know, just, and then when it all happened with the Australian ex-JW, everyone knows his name, but I'm not going to say it. When that happened, I said to him repeatedly, it's not your fault. But he and I had been arguing about it for days beforehand. Get them from social media, because at that point I was concerned for his brand. I didn't want people to know. I really was like, Lloyd, you're putting your head up. You're arguing with 4 people who said your video was shit, and there's like 4,000 people saying your video is great. Ignore the 4 idiots. But he had had a bad day that day. The day that he picked the fight, he'd had a bad day. He hadn't got what he wanted out of the day. And I'm not going any further into that. You can do with it as you wish. He hadn't got what he wanted that day. And he threw a tantrum, and he got on there, and his words to me were, I'm distracting myself from what's going on in my head. And so he picked fights with people on social media, you know, on I don't know, whatever it was, Reddit, bloody not Reddit, he doesn't go on Reddit, but Twitter, I think it was Twitter. And I'm like, that's not responsible. You know, I don't care what you think, and you've got rights, and you've got this, and you've got that. That's all going well. But you're an activist. People look up to you. You know, you're supposed to speak for people who are vulnerable, you know, child sexual abuse victims, this, that, you know, I could go on for hours. And I lost my brain with him. Like, I got angry because I thought, you know, you need to take responsibility. You're not prepared to change. You won't take any responsibility for your actions. This is just not acceptable, and I'm not playing. I'd already decided with producer Bob after the 17th of December that we were done. But then when all of this came out and he just was not prepared to take responsibility, I can't work with that. That would be unethical for me. So that's when I pulled the pin.
I think I don't want. I think maybe this is probably, you know, and I'm not one to say what other people should and should not do. I'm not that kind of a person. I'm very, I guess if you want to put a label on it, I'm very libertarian when it comes to live and let live. And I do feel, though, that for me, this is the last time that I really want to talk about Deanna, because she has no blame in this until, you know, and like I said, I think maybe the community as a large should maybe heed that advice. I'm not going to tell them that they have to or anything like that. You know, there's no leaders in our group of people. You know, we're all individuals, and we can make our own decisions. But I think the right thing to do would be to leave her out of this. And Lloyd, the right thing for him to do would be to, if he wants to save his brand, I think he needs to have a Jimmy Swaggart moment almost. You know, he probably would hate that term, but he needs to have a moment where he lays bare and he acknowledges how other people have felt, how this has affected other people, even if it's not their business. You know, you can still say, look, this isn't any of your business, but I understand how you feel, you know, and that has not even happened. And I think that,
and I agree with you entirely. The only thing that I would say is that I do believe, in the respect to the allegations and not the confirmed statement, I do believe it is people's business because of the fact of the conduct that he's displayed in the particular industry we're talking about, and the financial contributions, and where his wage, as he likes to call it, comes from, and what the intention of those giving that contribution, what their intention is when they give it. And ultimately, it's for everybody to decide for themselves. It's not for me to say what should happen. I'm giving you the information. You make your own decision.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not taking a stance on whether it is anybody's business or not. I think I was trying to just steelman his argument and to say that you don't even have to say it's somebody's business. You can still hold that position, yet at the same time acknowledge how those revelations have made people feel about the situation. And I think that that's at minimum, you know, what I was hoping for when he did that live stream. I gave money on that live stream. I put it on. I was at work. He scheduled it for a certain time, and I was like, "Oh, I have a meeting at that same time. Well, I'll just turn the live stream on while I'm in my meeting, and then I'll go to that as soon as my meeting's over." I swing over to the live stream, send him $20. Hey man, I know XJWs get you down. They can be really toxic, because I thought it was some of this old stuff that people have brought up over the years about him. And then I find out that he's admitting to all these things, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? It was a huge shock for me, and it was a huge disappointment too, because I mean, I shouldn't have I didn't put him on a pedestal. I knew he had issues with accepting criticism, even if it's constructive. But at the same time, like, it was like, this is kind of a guy that is constantly on the governing body's ass. He's constantly going after them, and it's like, for this to happen, it's like, oh, it was so disappointing and devastating. But I don't want to get too much more down this rabbit hole. I do want to say I told some people on Twitter that I would talk about their questions. These are along the same lines. What can we do as a group, or like, what mentality can we have when it comes to the public shaming kind of things? We don't want, like, people are shaming you publicly, saying things about you, and then people are doing the same thing to Lloyd at the same time. And I think you've spoken to your justifications on why you did what you did and why you felt it was important. But what factor can change going forward that will prevent something like this from happening?
I don't know. One thing that I have learned over the course of this journey is that the community seemed to have a very reactive response, which is, I understand, is normal. Then as people started to calm down and have a logical brain thought, they started to weigh up, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And then they started to make opinions for themselves. Some people are still an emotional brain, and some people went into logical brain straight away, which, we're always going to have that in community. I don't really think that there is a way to organize it, but I think there's a time for us as an organization, as a community, to get real with ourselves, to start acknowledging that our critical thinking skills are not as developed as we think they are. Our need for engaging professional therapists to address some of the issues and some of the triggered behaviours and some of the things that we do and the ways that we think. I think we need to engage more in that than necessarily concerning ourselves with the JW broadcast for the month, because that's all we're doing is re-triggering ourselves and re-hating the organisation and redoing this and redoing that. I hadn't thought about this back until December, and in the January period, I started to think about these things, and then I again started to continue to think about them after the 31st of January and when people reacted the way they did. So I don't know if we can organise it. I think we all need to just have a real long, hard look at ourselves as individuals, and rather than calling people names and saying you're crazy, you're this, you're that, you're a person who should have died in 2017. Thank you for that person who made that comment, jerk. But rather than reacting to that, that hate and behaviour, we have a responsibility to regulate ourselves. And, a conversation will only continue if there's two parties. If someone wants to behave that way, we need to teach ourselves through therapy or otherwise. And there are things that are online that are free. We can't use the excuse, I can't afford a therapist. I get it. They're very expensive. But there are resources available and they're free. We need to look at that. And the critical thinking, look, I'm going to say it. Sometimes Kim and Mikey say things that I don't agree with. Sometimes I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Or, the mechanism that you used to think about where you got to, there's facts in there that are incorrect. So you're always going to get to the wrong ending. But you know what? I've always been able to have a conversation via email. I'll send Kim a message and say, just here's the legislation on this. So it's particularly about the redress scheme, because obviously that's my jam. But I can have a conversation with them. And you know what? They're always very willing to talk or to make a clarification. I've seen her do correction videos before. That's just one example, because that's, we haven't always seen eye to eye. They don't like me because of my, association with Lloyd. So don't think for 1 second that it's all peaches and cream with Kim and Mikey and Kim Silvio, because it's not. I'm very grateful for them to spend the time to talk to me, and they were so kind to me, even though they can't stand me, which is fine. Um, I respect them and I respect their opinion, and we should listen to everybody's opinion. And just because you might be an anti-vaxxer or not an anti-vaxxer or whatever you are, doesn't make everything they say wrong. So, you know, from a community perspective, I think that we need to really work on our critical thinking skills. We don't just have to form the opinion based on one person say so or two persons say so. Go and look at everything and make your own bloody decision. So I don't know.
I think that's a great point. That's a great perspective. Like, you know, I'm vaccinated, but at the same time, like, I can totally see somebody's perspective.
Absolutely, me too.
On why they might be hesitant, and I'm not. Mm-hmm. And also, you know, being a libertarian, I don't want to get too much into politics, but being a libertarian, I hate the government telling me what to do. So it's like when the government says you have to do something, that's when I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it.
No, actually, I don't think I don't need to research it. The answer's no.
Yeah. So part of the reason why this might be kind of funny. I don't want to get too much down the vaccine route, but part of the reason why I got the vaccine was because I was like, Biden might start requiring this for a lot more things than just, you know, just the military. If I get the vaccine now, it's not the government telling me to do it. It's me doing it. Whereas later, when it's required, I'm going to be like, no, I'm going to be so angry.
I'm not doing that. I'm going to go to jail.
So I was like, let me get it now before I become a crazy person. and decide to go, you know, protest at Washington or something. I'm not going to do that.
But we don't have to scratch each other's eyes out if we come from a different perspective.
Right.
You know, if I'm an anti-vaxxer and I don't believe in the vaccine and I have my reasons for not believing, but you do, but that's okay. That's very okay. We don't need to call each other names. It's unnecessary. You're not crazy because you choose to have it, and I'm not crazy because I choose not to.
Yeah.
And I guess that's that's my takeaway on what we can do as a community to avoid this ostracism and public shaming and you know, all of that sort of thing. If we don't have, I don't think we should have one voice that's louder than any other in the organization, in the community. If I say organization again, I'm going to choke myself. In the community, we shouldn't have. So, you know, someone shouldn't be in that stronger position where, you know, their conduct is called into question. My personal opinion, I never had a problem with Lloyd receiving income in order to do his activism work because he did it full time and his content was full time, and that's fine. The problem that I've learned subsequent to that is that then he has that person, whether it be him or someone else, has responsibility to the community to present and to have, you know, that ethical behavior. I just don't think that's fair to a person. So I think we shouldn't have it at all. I think activism work should be, you know, cost only plus a tiny little bit if they need basis. It shouldn't be the way it has gone. I think we need to change that.
Individual, yeah, I think you're right. I think people should do their own thing, and if the group wants to get together and go, you know, picket or do something,
go for your life.
As long as it's peaceful, I have no problem with it. As long as there's no criminal activity, no trespassing or anything like that. Yeah, I'm
live and let live. Like the next question was live and let live. I don't care. When I first saw, there's only one thing that I still don't agree with. I personally still don't agree with Kingdom Hall crashing. But if you want to go Kingdom Hall crash and you break the law, the consequences are on you, not me. But I think, you know, if you want to go into a silent protest, they did one in Melbourne in 2019. It was so successful and it was fabulous. Really well done, got lots of media presence and lots of people woke up. JW Facts website was out of control with people, like, you know, accessing the website over that weekend. So, you know, that was, I wasn't there, I had nothing to do with it either, by the way, but, you know, it was very effective. Live and let live.
Yeah,
just let people do what they want. We don't need to be told. We spent however many years of our lives being told what to do. So not hurting anybody else and not breaking the law, knock yourself out.
Yeah. So another question somebody had, and I'm going to kind of reword this. He said, if there had never been a Lloyd, let's not talk about Lloyd. Let's say, what work are you going to be doing as an XJW activist? Has this shied you away from this? Has this made you have second thoughts? Has this made you reach out for maybe that XJW world?
I'm going to get emotional.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I am walking away.
I'm
So
sorry.
if, obviously I've got a commitment. Sorry, excuse me. I'm just going to take a sec. Try and... Yeah, I am walking away. Mostly for the fact that I want people to understand that I didn't do this to elevate myself. I had more than enough of a position within the XJW community to start with, more than I ever wanted. I don't actually know. People ask me all the time, how did that happen? And I don't actually know how it happened, but obviously I had a unique set of skills, and that I felt like I could be valuable to the community, and so I did what I did. But not now. I want people to know that I didn't do it for that reason. That was not my motivation, not my intention. But obviously, I do have, I've got commitment to the Australian Redress Scheme. I've got commitment to helping CSA victims in Australia. I've, helped some people with applications and whatnot, for, just helping them through the process, helping them to understand the process, what's going on, burdens of proof, blah, blah, blah. And, I would not shy away from that. And I have contacts in the XJW community within Australia. So they have contact with people in the community, and they know that if they needed help, that they could contact me, or they'd get referred to me from people that know me and know that I help people with that sort of stuff. And, if there was ever a time where anybody needed some legal research done or some information sought or clarification on what a legal document meant, they could always contact me and I would be more than happy to help them. But as respects, I will do my own personal thing. I have a couple of little ideas for, just some local stuff in my local area. And certainly if I saw a Jehovah's Witness on the street, I definitely would engage in a really friendly conversation with them, which I consider activism. So, that I would be involved with, but anything else, no.
I think that's a good thing. When I stepped away, I was obsessed with the organization, and recently I've been talking to people, but at the same time, it's like I never gave up completely that obsession. I always, it's always been in my periphery. I kind of just kept up with the blogs and things like that. But at the same time, it was a huge relief, a weight off my shoulders to not have to spend time creating content, or what's the next big story going to be? Do I have to do a leak? Is my buddy going to leak some information to me? That kind of stuff was so stressful, leaking things out. And now it's like I think I can do more. If I'm going to do any kind of activism personally, I think I'm going to do more conversations, and where it's life beyond. Who are successful people that are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses? And I don't mean successful like famous. I just mean like a teacher, a school teacher. Here's a school teacher that's an ex-Jehovah's Witness, thriving, flourishing. How was she able to leave behind that obsession, or how was he able to leave behind that obsession? And I think that could go a lot further to help people to get through that exit period. The exit period is the hardest one, and it's where you're the angriest. You're the most emotional in that period of time. Emotional when it comes to the organization, and you want to fight back, and it's understandable. But how do you move beyond that mode? And some people get stuck in that rut. I won't name any names, but there's some people that have been stuck in that rut for over a decade. And it's like, how do you get past that? That can't be positive. It can't be good for your mental health.
And I agree with you. And there is so much work to be done. I'd love people to get involved with asking people like Jan from Norway, Denmark. Oh, my mind is frazzled. And find out how they did something rather than sensationalize what happened, but how did they get to where they are? There's a lot of things that we can learn. And I will say also, I'll be in contact, and I still will be an admin. And there's an international XJW women's only group. Fabulous group, love it to death, and would never leave it. So I'll still be doing that as well. I'm obsessed with support. I have no interest in anything else. So those are the only things I'll be doing.
I think I'm not going to disagree that with your decision. I think that you should do what's best for you, and I think that you're probably going to find that there's going to be a lot less drama and a lot less stress when you move to that point. I do want to mention somebody did make a comment on Twitter. We already covered this. We already covered why how that you actually tempered yourself when it came to that statement, and there was a lot more you wanted to say.
And there was a long period of time as well between. It wasn't an emotional statement.
Yeah. I think that it's clear after our conversation that there's a lot more that you could have said if it was going to be an emotional statement. So, all right. So, Kim, I really want to say thank you. Thank you for joining me. I've taken an hour of your time, and I really appreciate you giving me that hour. Time is our most valuable asset, and I really want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I know that this has been a nice conversation. I'm actually excited for you that you're gonna for your future. I think that you're gonna really enjoy life. Life is gonna be a lot less obsessive.
Well, it's going to be a lot less busy.
Sure.
I'll have more time reading documents and quality checking videos and doing transcripts and commentary on Watchtower stuff is probably. I'm not going to miss that. But if I could just say to the community, use this as a positive. Don't look at this as a negative. Take personalities out of it. Stop using, Diana this, Lloyd that, Kim this, Mark O'Donnell that, Mike and Kim this. Stop back and have a think about your own reaction and why you reacted the way you did. I hope that the community learns from this, and I hope that that ultimately we can be better. We can be nicer people, and that the community can do better as a collective. And I hope that in the future that the lessons that are learned from what's happened in the last 6 weeks or whatever, that we do come better, we support each other, we look at what's really going on, and it's not about one person. 100 good men, 100 average men will always do more work than one very good man. And so I hope that people think about that.
Awesome. I think that that's a great message. I think I really appreciate. Again, just want to reiterate, appreciate your time. I'm gonna end the stream, and keep in touch. Don't lose touch with me. If you decide to delete Twitter, which everybody does at one point in their life,
I need to just join Twitter
because it's a cesspool sometimes. I swear. But if you ever decide to leave Twitter, please give me your contact information. I'd love to keep in touch and keep those lines of communication open. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And thanks everybody for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.
All right.